I really like the neighborhoods that I have chosen to invest in. You need to have a plan. You need to figure out what you want to do.
He said, to make my investors whole, I am taking money out of my bank account and giving my investors their money back. Because let's face it, if we lose one investor, we lose them for life.
We make up 3%. And of that 3%, half of us have inherited it as opposed to starting.
Greetings, well builders. Welcome to Get Diversified, your go-to podcast for all things real estate investments.
I'm Jacqueline.
Melvin Landry. We're thrilled to embark on this wealth building journey with you.
Imagine this. What if your investments not only secure your future, but also unlock a life of financial freedom? That's what we're diving into on this show. Apartment buildings, storage facilities, mobile home parks, the whole shebang.
But here's the kicker. It's not just about investing. It's about crafting a legacy, building memories with your loved ones, and seizing every moment. Time is the currency of life. And let's be real, none of us wants to waste.
We've got the insights, experience, and dash of excitement to spice up your investing game. Plus, we'll throw in some real-life stories that'll make you see the potential in every brick and mortar.
Subscribe, buckle up, and get ready to turn your investments into the ticket to financial freedom. Together, we're not just building wealth, we're building the community of savvy investors. Let's get diversified.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Get Diversified. I'm your host today, Jacqueline Landry. My husband is off duty today, and I am here with a very special guest, Natasha Falconi. So we met at a conference, and we actually had a little breakfast with a bunch of women, and we kind of started talking, and she was like, I want to be on your podcast. So without further ado, Natasha, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I love speaking all things real estate, all things ladies in real estate. So I'm happy to be here with you.
Yes. Yes. I love that. Women, there needs to be more of us in the field and kind of get out there and start and do big things and just kind of lift us up. Right. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Natasha.
Well, I live in the South Florida area, and it is also where I invest. I am a multifamily real estate investor and a syndicator. So a portion of my portfolio I own, the other portion I syndicate. And I started my career as a CPA. And I was placed in the real estate tax department, not really knowing anything about real estate, and that's where I discovered, wow, this is pretty fabulous. From there, I went to work for a developer, and 18 years in as the president of their company, it was time for me to start my own venture. So, since 2019, I've been in business for myself now, and what I focus on is buying multifamily, B and C multifamily properties in specific neighborhoods in the South Florida area with the objective of improving the assets, creating great places for the tenants to live, wonderful returns for the investors, and just improving communities. So like all of that, all of those elements have to come together in order for us to choose a property to invest in.
Yes, absolutely. I love B and C class. Why do you stay away from the A class buildings?
I think the neighborhoods that I invest in, there are no A class buildings at this time, and there's an easier barrier to entry in the B and C class because you're not competing with the institutional investors. They're also larger, so it requires larger capital. And I really like the neighborhoods that I have chosen to invest in.
That's awesome. And yeah, we feel the same way, right? The entry to barrier on A class is just not usually what we invest in. I think we have one that we've invested in the past. But really, I think the value is improving the area, improving the building, right? Giving people a better place to live and not outpricing people from renting apartments, right? So I feel like all these A-class buildings that they're building, the rents are so astronomical that they're like double my house payment, my mortgage payment. And so, you're kind of pricing people out of the rental market And with high interest rates, you're also pricing people out of the, buying their own house market as well. So I don't want to, just keep, you know, letting that snowball, right? And I rather would work on the B and C class and improve neighborhoods and improve, the quality of living that
Now,
people have.
all neighborhoods are different, right? So there's like you mentioned, A class, more amenities, more expensive. B and C, less amenities, so it's more affordable. And in many cases, the tenants are in a place where they don't require those amenities at that time. So it's a balance, in my opinion.
Yeah,
And I find that, like you mentioned, many of the assets require work because many times the owners have had the properties for 15, 20, 25 years, and they just need a little love. And the residents of the area want to stay in those neighborhoods, and they have nowhere to go where they can live somewhere that they love and are proud of. And so that's what we offer in the assets
fantastic.
that we buy and renovate.
Fantastic. So you mentioned that you own some by yourself and you
Yes.
syndicate others.
Yes.
Talk to me about that balance, because I think there's a misconception to a lot of people out there that you have to be all in on multifamily, and that once you invest in multifamily, you can quit your W-2 and you can live happily ever after, which, as we know, is false. So talk to me a little bit about the owning and versus the syndicating and why that's important.
Well, I think two things. I think that it is possible to invest in multifamily and eventually retire. I just don't think, like you said, it's not automatic. You need to have a plan. You need to figure out what you want to do. So, do you want to invest and be active in multifamily or any asset class? But we're specifically talking about multifamily. You want to specifically invest in multifamily and say, okay, this is how I am going to create wealth for my family. Or do you want to keep doing what you love and stay in your W-2 and invest passively and do both? They're both possible. So that's like
Yes.
the first thing that I would say, like, figure out what you love. I mean, maybe you prefer owning a restaurant and investing passively in real estate, or you're in art, or whatever it is that you may be in, you can do both. But if you decide to do what we do, then you have a plan on getting there. And so how did I decide that? It kind of happened organically. So while I was employed, I bought an apartment, then a condo, then I bought another condo, and then I realized, wait a minute, what am I doing here? I'm buying condos. Then I started going into buying, then I bought a house. And then after I had a few condos and houses, I decided, well, I want to transition into buying larger assets. And
And were you renting those houses?
they're rented. Yes, these houses are all rental properties. And well, except one, which was the one that I lived in when I was much younger. So it's a rental property now, but that's where I started. And so then once I decided that I wanted to do this as a career, have my own investment company, then I put together a plan, and we had savings, and I bought an 8-unit property, and then we bought a 6-unit property, and then we bought a 12-unit property. And then at that point, I realized, well, how do I continue to grow, and how do I continue not only to grow for myself, but give opportunities to others to invest alongside of me that don't want to necessarily be the ones picking up the phone and dealing with the tenants and the property management and all of those things, but they want the benefits of generational growth and returns. So then at that point is when I began reaching out to friends and family and started the syndicating as well. And so
that's awesome.
I
So
invest in all my deals.
Yep. So let me ask about the syndication. So you reached out to your friends and family. How did that go when you first started?
Um, how did it go? I thought it went great, but
It
it
went good?
wasn't
Okay.
easy. But it
Yeah.
wasn't easy, and so to me, it's great is the fact that I made it to the finish line. Not that it was easy to get there. So I treated it as it needs to be treated, as a professional business with a professional offering memorandum, and had one-on-one meetings, and some said yes and some said no. And that's the nature of the business. So it
Yeah.
went great because I made it to the finish line and raise the money that we needed to raise. I invest also in all of the deals. I think it's important for
Yes.
GPs to also have skin in the game and not just invest fees
Exactly.
in the deal. So I think that also adds a lot of credibility as well. And so that's how I did it. Just picking up the phone and calling people that believed in the mission of what I'm doing to improve the communities, and believed in the underwriting, and that's how we got started.
Awesome. Now, did you have to, with the syndication piece, did you have to do a lot of educating to your friends and family about what you were doing, or did it kind of gradually their knowledge increase because you've kind of always been in the field?
I think that's a great question. I think it was a balance. I think some understood what I did and what I do and what I do for a living, and others not necessarily understand the makeup of how it was. And I think it's our responsibility as GPs to be really thorough in explaining, no matter what the level of understanding is, of what you're doing, how you're doing it, what the game plan is, how you're improving the property, how the returns are going to be paid out. Because saying, oh yes, we're going to, it's a 7% or a 6% return, well, that doesn't always mean that's what you're receiving day one. Explaining those things, being very thorough about what the expectation is and how things are going to happen. Because what's in an OM is you're as detailed as you can be, but I think you also you're very detailed in the OM because that's important. But those are like big picture snapshots. You want to deep dive and have conversations and make sure people understand expectations.
Yeah.
And as
So
well as with fees, that's another thing, if I could bring up.
yeah,
Talk about the fees, because businesses need to be run and fees are okay. You just need to, it becomes an issue when you're not disclosing what they are. And I think that's another thing
exactly.
that's super important.
Exactly. I think a lot of people think that we make tons of money by raising money from our friends and family on these deals. So I like to tell them kind of what it is, right? Hey, this is how much share we get depending on the deal. So,
Yeah.
as you know, in our audience, if you don't know, there's different ways of structuring a deal. It could be 80% to your LPs, 20% to your GPs. It could be anywhere around that area. So it can really vary. So, I think it's definitely worth a conversation to let people know
Yes.
what those fees are, and how really, when at the end of the day, who gets paid first? The limited partners or the passive partners. So we as GPs have a very good incentive to run that property like clockwork, to
Yes.
increase the value, right? Because if we don't, all of our LPs are going to get paid at the very end, and the GPs are going to be left with nothing, right? So I think, clearly explaining that. And then just like another thing, I was having some conversation with some of my investors, and I said, well, what's important to you? And prior to that conversation, I didn't really know what was important to each one of my investors. Was it tax benefits? Was it cash flow? Was it the appreciation at the very end? Like, really, what was it? And I think it's really helpful to understand that and position that when you're actually talking about a deal, right? To say, hey, I know you're interested in tax benefits. This is why this deal is so great.
That's a
And
great.
by the way, yeah. And oh, by the way, here are some risks with the deal.
Mhm.
this is what
Oh,
I see is a little bit
yeah.
of a risk, right? Because it can't all be rosy. I'm going to say, okay, hey, look, we have to refinance this thing 2 times in the next 5 years. That's a little bit of a risk.
That's a
And you're,
great point. Bringing up the negatives or the difficulties or the things, because there is not a deal ever that is smooth. It doesn't exist. There's always
no,
something that happens, and having those conversations of the things that happen once you're in the deal and explaining, oh, these are the things that have happened, and disclosing that to the investors, but also in the front, here are some things that we could encounter, is so critical. You are so right. Because that is how you develop good relationships with investors. I don't think anyone expects things to be smooth 100% of the time, but when you're bringing it up and having the conversations beforehand, it creates a whole different credibility. It creates that credibility for you and the work that you're doing.
yeah, and it's interesting when, if a new person goes to one of these multifamily seminars, 2 or 3 days, they're like, you could get rich, you could build cash flow. It's super easy. All you need to do is take $25,000 and invest it in a multifamily. And yeah, that's true. That's how you could get started. But there is a lot of hard work. And so for the investors out there that are listening to this, make sure that you understand your general partnership team as well, right? So
Yes.
I keep hearing this. I kept hearing this over the weekend at a conference that I was in, is you can have a okay deal with a great team, and that asset is going to flourish, right? Or you can have a great asset that you purchased at a great price and have a sub-average general partnership team, and that deal can end up in the toilet.
That's a great point. That's so true.
So just, man, know who your general partnership team is, because when you encounter those difficulties, right? The disasters, the fires, something unexpected like COVID, what is that team going to do? And how are they going to very quickly pivot to make sure that that asset doesn't, start to go down in value, or, the rent start to, decrease, or the occupancy decreases. So what else can you add on that piece about knowing your general partnership team? Do you have any stories to tell us about that?
People first is so critical. And I don't have any firsthand stories. I've heard many stories, but I can't, where you get so excited about the deal, and then because you receive something or you get excited about the deal, but you don't necessarily know who you're doing business with. And so my advice would always be, not only know the person first, deal second, always. And really understand, what are the person's values? How do they look at an asset? What do they think about the community they're investing in? What do they know about the market? What do they know? Because, okay, this is great and it has great returns. This particular asset in X city. Well, do you even know what's going on in that city?
Right.
Have you been to that city? Who's responsible for that? I think those are all the things that you really need to know as an investor, as a passive investor, because how the GP reacts to that line of questions, to that understanding, I think it will give you a big window into how they run their business. I've had situations where I have had many conference calls with the same potential investor and someone that I knew, but someone that really wanted to deep dive, because we know each other, but you don't necessarily know how I run my business, but we know each other well. Many calls with one particular person, really deep diving into it. And I appreciate that, because then you really know who you're doing business with. And it's really important to know that, because it's not what you do when things are good. It's what you do when, like you mentioned, some situation that you don't foresee, how is that going to be handled? And that's what you want to know.
Exactly. So I heard a great story probably a few weeks ago. We belong to a lot of different groups and masterminds, like everybody does, right? And this one guy said, I bought, 5 or 6 investors to this deal. We're going to lose this asset. Okay. For whatever reason, right? There's many reasons why. And he said, to make my investors whole, I am taking money out of my bank account and giving my investors their money back. And this is a year into the asset, right? So those are the people that I want to do business with, right? That take pride in what they do, and they take pride in any investors that invest with them. And just that moral piece just made me think, yeah, if any one of my deals went like that, I would want to have enough money in the bank to be able to make my investors whole. Because let's face it, if we lose one investor, we lose them for life. Right? They're never going to come back and trust us again. And they may even tell other people to not invest with us. But think about that guy who returned their money. He was probably talking to everybody about, oh my gosh, I invested in this deal, it didn't go right. And the investor actually returned the money to me. And I just thought that was amazing. So if I ever get into that situation, hopefully not. But if that ever does, come a point where that happens, I want to be like that person, right? To be morally.
Goes back to communication. Goes back to letting the investor know what's going on and being very forward with them. And that's a pretty incredible story.
Yeah, I love that. And then another story that I heard, which was pretty interesting, is, the general partnership team didn't exactly put together the capital improvement budget correctly. So you really have an option, right? You have 2 options, well, multiple, but the first one is, should the GP team pull together money and compensate for that error? Or should they go out to their limited partners and do what's called a capital call? Oh my God, when I see capital calls, I freak out.
It's one of those things. It just depends what it's for. Is the capital call to make an improvement and increase returns? Is the capital call because a mistake was made? It's so not black and white. It's so fluid, or so, did the GPs make a mistake? What happened that caused those situations? But of course, you hear capital calls and you're like, oh my God, but what is it really? And what is the reason?
Exactly. Well, that's a great point that you had, right? So my immediate response was, oh, the GPs should put in their money. But what if it was related to something else? Then, what if we decide we're going to do something out of the ordinary to the property and improve it, and, this is what it's going to do to the rents? Well, then, being able to communicate that to your investors, it's a great point.
And letting them decide. Yeah, letting them decide what works.
Yeah, that's true. So talk to me about the properties that you do own. Do you do your own property management?
Yes, we do our property management internally. So I own properties in Hialeah, which is a city here in South Florida, and Little Havana, which is an area within the city of Miami. Those are the 2 areas that I primarily focus on. And we have a few assets, 2 assets on Miami Beach, in North Beach, in Miami Beach. And they are high percentage of Hispanic concentration in those neighborhoods. And I chose those neighborhoods, one, because I grew up in Hialeah, so I understand the market very, very well. And I believe there's a lot of opportunity there for improvement of the assets that exist to create better spaces for individuals that currently live there. And in that particular market, the tenants, the residents like to stay near their families. So the assets that I own there, it's interesting because, some people ask, oh, do you buy, 20 units and up or 50 units and up? And my answer is always, well, I focus on the market, because I bought a 30-unit building in Hialeah, but there's an 8-unit building next door. Well, I would buy that, even though it's not a 30 or 40-unit building. And then there's a duplex next to that. So my focus is market concentrated, not asset size.
Yep.
And so I own two buildings in Hialeah, 3 buildings in the Little Havana area, and they're all about a block away from each other. And then
Awesome.
two buildings in Miami Beach.
So you're the owner of the block.
I'm working on it.
That's awesome. That's one of the goals we have in some of the areas here in Pittsburgh as well. It's like, let's try to concentrate where our rentals are, just in case, we don't want to self-manage these properties and we want to give them off to a property management company. It'll be easier for them to take a cluster.
It creates a lot of efficiencies. And that's what, it does. It creates a lot of efficiencies for us in how we manage the property management aspect of it.
So how much time does it take you out of your day? Is it like a 30%, 20%, 50%, out of all the stuff that you do, including multifamily, right? There's underwriting, there's syndication, there's all that stuff. And then the property management side.
It depends on the week. So, a few weeks ago, it was heavy duty property management, heavy duty managing all of the projects or capital improvements more than anything else, but managing all the projects. And because I am very hands-on as far as inspecting and being available to make sure that the projects are working and flowing the way that they need to. So, and then on another week, I will be, heavy on the acquisition side. I try to, so like what a perfect week looks like is less on the property management side, more on the investor relations side, and on the acquisition side. That's the goal.
Okay.
Communicating with my investors regularly is very important to me, and speaking to them, not only sending them the reporting, but actually having conversations and letting them know what's happening. And so I try to spend most of my time on that, but there are circumstances, which is like running any business where you have to pivot, and that's part of the magic, that you have to be available to run the business and make sure that you're dealing with everything that needs to be dealt with, and then you have the right people in place to help you as well.
Exactly. Yeah, right now I'm probably doing 90% on this 4-unit and this 7-unit that we're buying, right? Because kind of need to clean house. You need to work on the capital improvements. You need to start thinking of other efficiencies that you can have, like door locks where you don't have to change the key every time, meeting those vendors, yada yada. So when people ask, oh, so what have you been doing with multifamily? Not much lately. 90% of my time's been focused on that. So I get it.
When you have a new acquisition, that's a perfect example. When you have a new acquisition, all of your time is on that acquisition to make sure you're positioning it the way that you said you were going to position it. And the faster you go up front, the better the results are.
Yep.
So I
one
agree.
Question for you on this, on the stuff that you own. Did you buy that with your own money, or did you buy that with, some investor money? Did you buy it with hard money? Did you go to a bank? How did you actually buy all those assets that you own?
So I have a combination of different ways that I've done it. So I have an asset that the deposit, I put down the deposit, and it's a Freddie loan. So that's an 8-unit that I have, that it was, it's interesting. And there's where I think I made a mistake. So I put permanent financing on that particular deal too early.
Sure.
And so I potentially could have refinanced this and had a liquidity event to buy another asset. And now I'm not doing that at that point. So I have equity tied up, which is fine, because that's also part of the strategy is to create equity, which is fine. So that's okay. But there's a mistake that I should have done that later and not so close to the beginning. Then I have another deal, which is with a local community bank.
Okay.
And so the down payment was my own money, and then the local community bank. And the rest of the properties, I have been able to secure seller financing.
Oh.
And so that's something very interesting, because theirs were I do have partners in those deals, but the financing was through seller financing. These are owners that had the property with no mortgage at the time, and it was a benefit for them and a benefit for us, because they weren't paying all of the capital gains up front, and they are also now still receiving a check where they're not managing the asset. So it's win-win for everyone. And then it was easier to acquire financing on an underperforming asset, so that then when it's stabilized, then we can decide what avenue we take. Do we put permanent financing on it? Do we go to a local bank? And then make that decision at that time.
That's fantastic. I'm glad you brought up the owner financing. My husband just did a reel or a short little video on it. He was going down to the mailbox and he was like, I get these checks every month and have been for the last 20 years. Right. And so, he is the recipient of so he did that with one of his single family. Right. And so it's cash flow. So if you're interested in cash flow, the guy that you bought the building from, he's getting cash flow every month.
He's still getting cash flow. He had cash flow, and now he has cash flow with none of the work.
With none of the responsibilities.
And the tax benefit of pushing out the capital gains.
Exactly. So, wow. Yeah, good stuff. I mean, this is all super important and just great conversation that we're having. So do you ever do hard money when you buy some of these smaller assets?
I have not needed to. I was close at one point where I thought that the deal was going to fall apart with a bank and was going to have to do that, but I never had to. But I would if I needed to. If the numbers make sense, I believe in doing it if it underwrites properly, for sure.
So do you have any, and this is just from a personal standpoint, so what we do is we typically buy these smaller ones with hard money. And then once we get 2 or 3 or 4, whatever the requirement is of the institution, we group them together and we do a portfolio loan with a local bank.
Okay.
And so and one of the reasons we do that is we want to be able to close within 3 to 6 weeks. And so usually when you're doing a loan, it takes longer than that.
Yes.
Has that been your experience, that it takes longer than,
it
4 to
depends.
6 weeks?
If you're dealing with the seller is in line with what's happening. So the bank is the seller. So, I mean, I've closed 45 days, 60 days. And I think when the seller agrees to financing, it's a little different, because the delay could be because of a lawyer but both sides are on the same page.
Yeah.
If you're when I purchased the other 2 properties, they were very open to the time needed for the financing. But I do believe that in many instances, especially with, let's say, a 4-plex or 6 or the smaller, right now, because of how the competition is, and for those types of assets, the faster you close, the better. So having access to capital to close cash is fabulous if you're able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm exploring other ideas of what else can we do besides hard money. So you gave me some ideas, right? And then there's also people that have their money sitting in a bank or sitting somewhere that is gaining, 4, 5, 6% interest. So why can't I borrow the money from you? And I'm leaving that as a pretty broad statement, from you, whoever it is, and give you 8 or 9%. Wow, I'm doing a great thing for myself and I'm doing a great thing for you. I'm giving you 3% more than what you're making based on where your money is today. So those are some of the things that we're exploring, because at the end of the day, we don't want to take all of our money that we have and put it into an asset. We want to leverage other people's money so that we can have, be able to distribute that over multiple assets. So that's kind of our big thing.
And if other people are able to also have returns in the asset, and it helps the asset, and it helps, there's no reason why not to. And there's a lot of ways to do that. I think, like you mentioned, hard money lending is one. You mentioned portfolio financing. I think you and I separate a little bit there. I don't like portfolio financing because that's
Really? Tell me
cross
why.
cross collateralization. I like for every asset to stand on its own.
Right.
And so unless I haven't seen a reason for or a very great benefit of not allowing every asset to stand on its, not having every asset, sorry, excuse me. I haven't found a reason to put them together that would benefit as opposed to having each of them stand on their own.
Interesting. Okay. So you would refinance out of your hard money loan and try to get a loan with a local bank for these
Yeah,
assets?
usually, I mean, I have great relationships with a few of the local banks, and so I would, if I had a hard money loan, if I had a deal with a hard money loan, I would one, speak to the hard money lender and see if they're interested in staying in as an investor. That would be
Um,
one way to do it. Explaining the benefits of the appreciation in the long term, whatever that underwriting looks like, that would be one way. And then if that's one option, and then the other option is going to local banks to refinance the asset individually. When the asset is performing, I believe that if you put assets together because one is performing well and one is not performing well, I think that dilutes it dilutes maybe the property that's not doing so well and could create an issue in the future, as opposed
yeah,
to letting everybody stand on their own. And maybe this one stays with hard money, but these two you refinance out, and maybe, looking at them individually.
interesting perspective. Yeah, I'm gonna have to give that some thought. We're just now trying to, determine different options for us as we move forward. Wow. Well, this was a great conversation. So Natasha, if our viewers have any questions for you or they want to learn more about what you're doing down in the Miami area, Little Havana, Hialeah, and what was the third one?
Miami Beach, in the North
Miami
Beach area,
Beach.
Miami Beach.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I need to talk to you about that one. If you should do some Airbnb so that we could come and stay there.
Love
We
it.
need to diversify into that. But no,
Love it.
how can the viewers find you? Like how can they reach out to you and get in touch?
Yes, I'm on Instagram and Twitter. My handle is Nat Falconi, Falconi. You can reach me there, and I'm very active on both those platforms. And also, you can go to my website and email me or call me. It's falconi-capital.com. And so, anybody have any questions about multifamily in South Florida, please feel free to reach out. I love having conversations. I love helping people that are looking into investing in real estate. I'm on a mission to get more ladies investing in real estate. So if you're thinking about investing and are not sure, give me a call. I'd love to have a chat and encourage you to do so.
Yes. So another plug. We need more women investors.
Yes.
And how do we do that? We need to be out there, Natasha, every day pushing the pedal on educating women that they can do this.
Yes.
And somebody brought up a good point the other day. We're not necessarily seeing there's this huge women movement saying that we can do this all by ourselves. We definitely need strong support system. Like my husband is amazing and fantastic at this. So that's important to know too, having a support system that's there for you and working with you towards the same goals is great. But I would love to get more women into it so that they know, oh, I can do this. I can have a different stream of income without having another job. Wow.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because this is not women versus men or it's not about that. It's about us showing up, us being at the table. It's about knowing that it's not, is it scary? Of course it's scary. Everything that's worth something usually is scary, but it's about knowing that it's possible. And you don't have to be active in real estate to do it. You can, like we mentioned at the beginning of our talk, you can do what you love, but still participate, be, and invest in real estate, because that is how you will be able to create generational wealth for yourself. So look into it, check it out, look at other resources, talk to other ladies about it and see how they're doing it. That's a real I believe it's like the first step. I have a girlfriend that owns shopping centers in the South Florida area, and she's been in the business for about 40 plus years. And she started a conference for women investing in real estate because there's a statistic out there that only 3% of women invest, only real estate investors, we make up 3%. And of that 3%, half of us have inherited it as opposed to starting. So,
oh, wow.
So she started this conference so that she can bring other ladies that have started from nothing, like she did, and like I have, and like you
like
have exactly, and to show that there's a lot of us out there that are doing it. And so I'll give her a little plug. The conference is in March, and her name is Beth Azor, and it's 300.
I want to come.
Room. Oh my gosh, you should.
I want to come.
So fun. And I'll send you the link so that you can share it as well. And it's just a really invigorating, like a motivating event where you're saying, okay, I can do this.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you a fast story. So she was interviewing me, and at that point I had about 20 units. And she's like, oh, okay, so tell me about your journey and what you're doing and how many units do you own? And I'm like, I own about, I think it was 18 units or something like that at that time. She goes, well, how many are you, what's your plan? And I said, well, I'm going to double it. I think I'm going to own 40 units. She says, 40 units? No, 100 units.
Bigger.
I'm like, what?
Bigger.
I'm like, I want you to say in front of the 200 ladies that are sitting in this room that you're going to own 100 units next year. And I'm like, okay, 100 units. Guess what? It happened.
Yeah.
Because what you put your mind to, what you put out there happens. And so anyhow, that happened for me at that conference.
Well, it's about speaking. So I actually just brought that
Yes.
up at the conference I was in last week. So our goal is to have $50,000 in rental income come in a month.
Okay.
And everyone's like, oh. And I said, well, we own 60 houses that we're bringing in and rented. They were bringing in $25K. So why can't I buy 60 small multifamily, improve neighborhoods, give people a better place to live, and have that cash flow come in, and then still be able to do the bigger stuff, the bigger multifamily stuff. And how empowering is it? And oh my gosh, we're already on 40 minutes. So how empowering is it to be in a room with other women that are not trying to push each other down, but lift each other up? Holy cow. Because usually when I'm around a group of women, they're like, oh, did you see her hair? Did you see this? Right. And they're just constantly trying to push people down. And when you're in one of these real estate women groups or whatever, oh my gosh, everybody is just truly trying to help and truly uplift and, just uplift. I mean, uplift is the word.
Yes. Networking with each other. Oh, what are you doing? You're in self-storage. Let me introduce you to this one. Oh, you're in multifamily. I know she's looking for a deal to invest in. Absolutely. That is so true.
Fantastic. All right, Natasha.
Awesome.
Hey, look, hopefully our users are having as much fun as we do, because we could talk for hours. But hey, thank you so much for joining me today on the show. And we'll definitely be in touch, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
And have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Jacqueline and Melvin, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to listen to this episode of Get Diversified. Please make sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on future episodes. Finally, stop by our website and follow us on social media. Ciao for now. Make it a great day, and we'll see you next time. And remember, get diversified.